Producer dude, here we are again, another podcast. Are you beginning to like these things?
Yeah.
It sound very that you need to work on. I think you actually do. I mean, when we talk privately, it seems like you do kind of like these a little bit.
I do need to work on lying better.
Yeah. You really don't?
No, I like them. They're good.
Yeah, I thought you kind of did. They're fun. I mean, some interesting different personalities. Like we have one now. You know, we've had some really established people. Al Linders, Darley Dahlbergs, whatever. Gary Roach, of course. Now, I think we've got a guy that is going to be newer to a lot of our audience and maybe newer to people just in fishing because he hasn't been doing it as long, but he's got a little niche. Kayak fishing on the Great Lakes, or Lake Erie in particular, which on one aspect I think is insane, but on the other aspect, it's awesome.
Yeah, I came across Chuck a few years ago just on Facebook, and he was putting out some great content. And that's why I recommended him for this podcast.
You did, even though we already had it in the works because he is a Fish USA sponsored kayaker. So, of course, that's an easier way to get on the BIgwater podcast. Not that it's an exclusive deal, but it kind of is with the people we've had on here. Kind of.
Yeah, Chuck and I have some things in common and some things you didn't even know.
Well, I'm scared, but I'm ready to find out. So let's bring in Chuck before he decides he doesn't want to do this and has he's watching some of our videos right now and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to get insulted. But let's bring him on to the BIgwater podcast. Chuck Earls, welcome to the BIgwater podcast. Here we are.
Hey Ross, how are you?
Are you excited? I'm not. I'm kidding. That's me and you worked a couple of shows together. We're Fish USA guys, and then doing some other freelance and stuff. That beard game is still strong. I had to trim mine down. Trim it down. Dude, you are not trimming it down.
No, not at all.
Is that a kayak thing?
No.
Christine Fisher did not have a beard, Ross.
Producer dude coming swinging. He's swinging. So producer dude he's silent often, but he's deadly when he comes at you. So you're going to hear him just throwing it in there here and there, just so you know, especially since he gets a little information he hit me with today. And I was like, whoa. But I mean, kayak guys, is it fair? Cause you've kind of caught yourself a little niche here. I mean, we'll just jump right in that you're doing, like, not that you don't fish other things, but Great Lakes kayaking, right? Like you're on Lake Erie fishing for walleyes out of a kayak. I mean, you're one of the idiots, no offense, that I have yelled at all the time for, just driving over. Now I've watched your videos and you're like float Sioux safety and you got your VHF, right? And you're like got the flag up. But some of these guys out there, they need to find you. That's why we're having you on here. They need to find you. Fish USA that we work with is a big kayak dealer. They're like all in. They got all these guys doing it. And like, some of these guys are knuckleheads, man. They're going to get themselves killed. I want to choke a few of them. I got to be honest.
Right. I mean, it just comes down to it. They just have not encountered the situation that taught them the necessities to some of these gear, some of these pieces of equipment.
But in fairness, since I'm throwing some shots across the bow, pun intended, there's probably more ding dong boaters than there is kayakers. I mean,
absolutely there is. And that's why I always tell all the kayakers, it's not the fact that we have the right of way. It's our job to stay out of the way. We can see you guys coming from 4 or 5 miles away, and you're not going to see us until you're, maybe a quarter mile, half mile. So we can see you, we can judge your direction and just make sure we're out of the way. Now, with that being said, very often you see a boater comes up and realizes, oh, there's my entrance, and just takes a 90-degree turn. You got to watch for that. And you always got to watch for the pleasure boaters, specifically a guy that runs a boat by the name of Special K. Watch out for that guy because he'll aim right for you.
Where's he out of? Let's put him on blast. I love it.
That was out of Central Basin.
Special K isn't so special, huh?
No.
Have you had multiple incidences with Special K?
Yeah, I mean, at least one. The fact of the matter is you do something like that, you're not going to affect me, but you do it to somebody that's not prepared or in a less stable kayak. could cost somebody their life. So
let's put it out there, Ross, that your listeners, if they see Special K,
we ain't talking about cereal now.
Do something to them. Throw like dead fish in the boat somewhere. Hide it.
Dude, inciting a riot. I love this. God, it took so long.
Take a picture and post it to both of our social media. Just if you see Special K, it'll be kind of a contest.
You know, my give a shits, as you know, just keep getting less and less as I get older. But I think that we should, at some point, we're going to have a podcast and we're just going to throw it out there. I mean, because I think most of us guys, I firmly believe that if we all got together, there should be some people that kind of run out of the show. You know what I mean? Because everybody has the same problem with the same 2 or 3 people. And it's like, we could eliminate a lot of bitching and problems by just cutting a couple people out, you know?
Right.
That's big motors, no motors, kayaks or whatever. But so help me out here a little bit, because I don't know your whole story deal. And we don't need to know about, you know, what your favorite, you know, food is and subject and, you know, school or something. But you kind of came on pretty quick. So that tells me you're a hardworking guy, because I think that I tell people all the time, like, if you bust your ass, you can make it in the fishing industry in today's deal, because so many guys just don't want to work. And, right. You know, so you've kind of come up there quick, but maybe this is like, you know, an overnight, you know, 20-year success story. You know what I mean? One of those people, and they're like, I've been doing this forever, bro. You just didn't know me. Because in truth, you know, I don't follow the kayak thing, you know, that much. I work with some companies, you know, obviously that follow that deal, but you have a unique deal because you're doing this on the BIgwater primarily. And so how did that all come about, and how long you've been doing it? Give us a little feel for, you know, what you're doing.
Well, it all started, I think it was 2015, when I got my first fishing kayak. It was a sit-in 14-footer, and I loved to fish my whole life. But kayak fishing was a little bit different. It was kind of like against the grain, and that's like exciting to me. I like figuring things out. I like the challenge. Well, then cold season came. You know, and I didn't know any better, so I pushed the limits a little bit until the water froze, and waited till the water warmed up a little bit in the spring, got out there. But then I started doing my research on the cold water safety, which led me to getting a dry suit. And since I'd be fishing in those conditions by myself, I started doing the testing in the cold water to make sure that it wasn't a fact of the manufacturer saying that this was going to save my life. I knew for a fact that in these conditions, under these circumstances, you know, I was good because I was the only one out there. And sometimes even after the boat ramps would freeze, because the pungo was very light, so I could just find the closest beach, as long as there wasn't any ice along the shoreline, get out there and catch walleye. But I knew in that situation, there's no boaters to come and save me if I get in danger. So I had to prepare for that. And it just kind of all evolved from there. I was recording my testing and putting it out there to try to educate people, because like I said, I mean, there was one point where I didn't know any better. And fortunately, I didn't get in a bad situation or lose my life before I learned. You know, there's many other people that have lost their life in the cold water situation, or had near death experiences that'll tell you as well. You know, so that's kind of how it started, was just kind of putting it out there and just trying to be a resource for the community. You know, I figured if I could save one life, it was all worth it. And I was going through some career changes and just couldn't find my place. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to do my own thing. And eventually it just came down to it where I decided, you know, I'm going to burn the boats. You know, if you're going to take over the island, you got to burn the boats, because there's only one option then, and that's to take over the island, right?
I like that. That's like a pirate deal right there.
Yeah.
Arr. I like that. That's naughty.
So I'm a workaholic. You know, if I'm not fishing, I'm working on something. And, you know, people think it's work, but it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. You know, so continued to put stuff out there, continued to grow and help more people. And eventually that led to the guide service, which is growing really good. I'm actually pretty booked up this season, which is really nice. And teaching a lot of people about kayak fishing. And it just it evolved into where it is now, where, I mean, if I'm not here, all these people, they're going to go out there and they're going to have to learn on their own. They're going to have to make those mistakes that, I made along the way, or maybe some of my mentors made along the way. So I just keep pushing harder, whatever I can do. The main goal is to just keep people safe and, show them that they can enjoy their life instead of being afraid.
But that's a lot of, I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said, obviously in a different way. I've done the same thing, but it's a lot easier to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to roll out of this job and I'm going to start running a guide service. I mean, dude, that takes giant kahunas.
And guide service with kayaks on top of it, not just on
Lake Erie. Like
it's almost guide service. Yeah.
My sister says I'm not allowed to use this word, but it's almost retarded. I mean, it's borderline. Like I think you got to be a little bit batshit crazy.
A little bit. And
maybe a lot. I don't know.
It probably continues on from there. The more experience I get, the more I'm thirsty for more. On the days when it's too rough to take the clients out, those are my training days. Those are when I go out and I get in situations, in a prepared manner that teach me new lessons that I can bring to the guide service.
Producer dude, I see like Rocky in the background right now.
Yeah, and he's not kidding. He's not just going out 2 miles. If you watch his videos, he's 7, 8, 9 miles out.
And some of it, I'm just like, I'm like, on one end, I see this. I'm just being honest, and I'm like, it's like admirable. And then on another end of it, I go, that's dumb as shit. And then like in the middle, it's like, it's kind of cool. And I'm like, I just keep going each direction. I don't know. And then you see some of those guys out there, and, and it's not like, but I'm sure on a different level, I run a 23-foot Ranger, right? And people are like, oh, dude, that boat is so huge. Now, when you're standing next to that boat in the parking lot, it's up to here. It's a big boat. It weighs 6,000 pounds. But I always tell people the Edmund Fitzgerald is like, on the bottom, and it was like 800, 900, whatever it was, feet longer. Like the Great Lakes is a nasty, nasty place. I mean, Army Corps of Engineers or whatever ranked it the most dangerous freshwater body to navigate in the world at one point. I don't know what it is now. But, it's just a nasty place. And, doing it in my boat and with some of the other guests we've had, and we talked about, just how physically demanding it is and beats you up and all this shit. And then, like, here's Chuck over here, producer dude. He's like, no, I'm going to do it in a kayak. Yeah. I'm crossed. I still am. Honestly, as I thought about this coming up, with this, I was like, I don't know how I even look at this. Is this insane or is this admirable? Producer, dude, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, number one, I grew up in that area where he's fishing. So, so I see where he's at. I grew up along the lake my whole life. And yeah, just seeing him, I'm tired just kayaking, back and forth, in a canal or something, And
producer dude's in shape. Like he's balling out. Like,
yeah. And so it just, I marvel at it and marvel at the equipment that you take with you. Just, looking at your kayak and all the stuff that's in it to keep you safe.
A little bit of that is also the cheating aspect because, you got like, I run Dakota lithium batteries, and you got these batteries that are like this big now that run like this big, of old day. And you've got, your electric motors and stuff. So, I mean, you've got the creature comforts aside from your safety gear and all that, right? I mean, you probably, is it fair to say you probably couldn't have even done this to this level 10 years ago?
I think that's pretty fair to say, at least safely. When I was out in the Tiger Shark Pungo, one of the things that made that possible is that kayak had front and back bulkheads. Now, every once in a while, when the conditions would get a little bit rougher, and nothing like what I'm in today, but a little bit rougher, it would splash over the side. You'd take a little bit of water in your cockpit, and you'd have to pump it out. because a little bit of water will throw off the balance of a kayak. That being said, very limited on space, and you just couldn't care for a client. You couldn't care for them with the gear and stuff like that. There were some sit-on kayaks on the market, the sit-on tops like what I have now. But the biggest thing that I look at is you never know what's going to happen, right? I had a buddy I was meeting, I think this was like 2018. We were meeting up early spring, Tuscarawas River. And when I got there, they were loading him up in an ambulance. He had a massive heart attack at the boat ramp.
Oh my God.
So I look at that situation, as devastating as it was, as a lesson. I'm taking people out, 2 miles offshore. If something happens, I have to have the ability to get them back, right? I can't depend on paddling them back and taking the hour and a half, 2 hours that it would take. And that's where the Torpedo comes in. So with the Torpedo, I can have them back to shore 10 minutes, 15 minutes, in the process, calling rescue services. We pretty much meet at the ramp around the same time. So in that aspect and the safety aspect and just protecting the people that you're taking out there, I don't think it would have been possible.
So Ross, I want to stop the podcast for a second.
Whoa.
I know.
Okay.
We'll get back to the guest in a minute. I saw you. I was looking at stuff. I was researching. I was researching for.
Oh my God, you're doing your job. Oh my God.
I'm doing my job, and I was on something called Powder Puff, which I don't know why you were on Powder Puff, but I saw your face on something called Powder Puff or something like
Powder
that.
Hook, man. Powderhook.com.
Okay, well, what is that?
Well, as you kind of found out, we're cheating on a little bit. Normally, the fellow listeners there at BIgwater know that you have to tease me with ice cream to give a fishing report because I quite frankly hate them. But we are doing an extensive fishing report, amongst other things, with powderhook.com. And they've got a bunch of things across Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff too. But we're doing a detailed fishing report. They're talking about really detailed stuff with what's going on specifically on Lake Erie here in the western and central basins, and even a few times there in the eastern basin in the summer, now through May of 2023. So we're going to be doing lots of stuff, and you already seen some of it because you caught me red-handed, but we've got a perch, information on there. We're talking about planer boards. We've got all kinds of different information, but with myself and then some other Lake Erie studs that basically are teaching how to catch more walleyes, what's going on currently. And I mean, powderhook.com. It's a one-stop shop right now for Lake Erie info, whether it's a fishing report, videos, or some written articles, how to select a charter captain like myself, different things to think about and talk about. So a lot of unique things there, as you already know.
So powderhook.com. That's where we go.
What's too far? What is your parameters? I don't really have written down ones for myself because even today, I have a husband and wife couple. Yesterday I had some roughnecks. That bar goes up and down, as I'm sure yours does. But you personally, what do you think is hey, I'm not just, as you said, pushing the envelope or finding it out. You just go, hey, this is stupid, or this just isn't good, or I don't want my name attached to this, that I'm, capsized Chuck or whatever.
Right. Well, I would say my limitations now, they're basically just an opportunity to gain the skills needed for that. Now, with that being said, it is Lake Erie, and there's
so is it 10 miles offshore, or is it 3-foot waves, or?
I've been out in at least 4-footers, as measured by the weather buoy. The time early spring when I was out in probably a little bit bigger water, the weather buoy wasn't in yet. So, that's just kind of a guesstimate. It really depends on the distance in between the waves and the type of kayak you have and your preparation, and your planning. If you don't have the right planning, the right gear, and the right knowledge, you're going to put yourself in a situation very quickly. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I've been in 2-foot waves. I mean, it's kayak, no kayak, boat, whatever. I've been in 2-foot waves that you feel like you're in a washing machine.
right.
Where I'm in 4-footers, like you said, and so people that haven't done this to kind of visualize this, where they're spread out like Lake Michigan style a little bit, and you can almost just kind of ride the swell or even ride the troughs, and
Yep.
it's just kind of it's like a big slow roller coaster. When you start getting into that short chop, like there ain't no way to deal with it. I mean, you're just in a washing machine and it's just ride it out, and you've got to probably feel like you're whitewater rafting or something at that point.
A little bit. You know, and that's one of the reasons that I don't take my clients towards the Western Basin much in peak boater season, just because it is so rough from that. And that's kind of a complicated situation to deal with because the waves are confused. It also happens when you have the water coming in towards like a break wall or something like that. And people don't realize when they go along that you have the water coming in on top, the water bouncing and reflecting on the bottom, and it just creates this weird situation. And if you don't have the stability knowledge and the experience, you can easily make a mistake, lean the wrong way, and now you're in the water. Well, now the next problem is how much time do you have before the water throws you against that object? You know,
Producer, do you remember the podcast that we did when what he's talking about? It's called a sight.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that.
Yeah, I just want to see if you were still paying attention.
I'm paying attention. Yes,
because I'm still kind of marveling at this. I'm not trying to mock you or anything like that. I would do that privately if I was going to, but it's like, producer, are you with me that this, as he starts talking about like getting drawn into break walls and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've been with you on Chuck for a long time. I think I mentioned Chuck a long time ago to you when I'd found him. But yeah, I mean, so Chuck, I mean, what kind of gear is in the kayak? Like, what do you take with you? Because obviously you can't have as much gear as Ross has in his boat. So like, what are the essential to have a successful guide trip?
Well, first and foremost is the safety gear. All my clients get VHF radios. If they're in one of my kayaks, they have navigation with the fish finders, PFD, safety knife, and a pocket air horn, and obviously a whistle, as required by the Coast Guard. The air horn is just in case a boat's coming at you. They're not going to hear a whistle, but they're going to hear the air horn. Inside my hull, at all times, I have a life straw. I have non-perishable food. I have Pedialyte powder packs. I have a flare gun. I have a safety space blanket. I have a first aid kit. I have a fire starting kit, which isn't really practical for Lake Erie, but you get in a situation where you're like on an inland lake or a river and you find somebody that's wet. It's an ability to get them out of their clothes, get the space blanket around them, and start a warming fire. So that's kind of what that's in there for. Wintertime, sometimes Lake Erie is too rough and I'm fishing rivers and stuff like that. But all the inland guys should carry that for sure.
Yeah, that all sounds crazy, and you don't need it until you need it, and you're up on an island or something.
Yep. And that's really what it comes down to. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Especially in our situation on Lake Erie. For example, I don't know if you heard the story, but my neighbor, it's about 28 years ago, he got lost out on Lake Erie for 3.5 days. Ooh-wee. And Canadian Coast Guard rescued him. So fortunately, I've had really good mentors along the way, and he's one of them. He's told me that story probably, 20 times before I actually recorded it on the podcast. And I take that into account as well. Now, nowadays on a big boat, maybe it's not as likely. But on a kayak, you get stuck in fog. It can easily happen. And that's why I have the life straw on there if I need to.
So explain to us that are not familiar with some of these things. A life straw is?
Well, life straw is a water filtration system. So military members carry it. Basically, you could stick it in any freshwater source and it'll filter it out so it's drinkable.
Okay.
So I can only carry, I don't know, 4 to 6 bottles of water. You know, by the time I put my batteries and my fishing rods, my tackle and all that. So that's good for the day. If we get in that type of situation like my neighbor Jerry did, where the Coast Guard's looking for us, we have that life straw, which obviously that would probably be more likely me by myself in that situation, you know, than with a client, because there's a lot of precautions that we take for the trips, just making sure the waves aren't too big compared to the comfort, and fog. You don't ever want to go out in fog, get in a foggy situation.
I have seen kayakers out in fog, you know, and again, it's like, again, I can easy to judge. I was out in it, right? But yeah, you see some of that and you're like, dude, you at least need a flag. Like I've seen on yours, you know, you got the flag up there. It's like, because like you said, even in little ways, man, you don't see it till it's like, boom.
Right.
That's like, I don't know nothing about this, but I can tell you right now, if you're out on the Great Lakes, people, whether you hook up with Chuck or not, which you should, but you need a flag on that thing, and you don't be tiny with it. Get her done.
You want to get as tall of a flag as you can. You want to think you start to get in a trough, even if it's 1 foot waves, you might have 2 foot of water over top of you. That's over your head. That's over any little flag or anything like that. And when the boaters are driving, they have a large body of water to scan. So they're only looking in a certain direction for, you know, very short period of time. You're in that trough, you don't have a flag. Well, they didn't see you. They don't know that you're there. Now you pop up, they're already looking at, you know, total opposite direction.
Yeah. And I mean, the obvious thing is a guy that doesn't know this, even if they miss you, thank God, just the wake could put you in just as much harm's way.
If you don't have the right kayak and the right experience, absolutely. Good friend of mine, Jeff Little, he says, stability is earned, not purchased. You know,
Ooh.
Everybody always asks, what's the most stable kayak? Well, you gain stability by practice, by flipping it over, by re-entry, by knowing those limitations, and then by putting yourself in a little bit rougher conditions or a little bit more challenging conditions each time. You know, you don't want to go out there and commit suicide in 10-foot waves. But, you know, if you're used to flat water, go out on a day on an inland reservoir where it's a little bit choppy. See what that feels like. See how challenging it is actually to get against the wind and the waves and the current. And you just gain those skills as you go.
Confidence has got to be a big part of it, right? I mean, I think it's no different for somebody driving a boat in rough water. I mean, a lot of people are just shit scared right out of the gate, and then you can't do anything else because you got that fear rolling so thick. But
yeah, I mean, the mental part of it is huge. Early on, one day there was 4 of us. We went all the way out to the Cleveland Water Inlet, the crib, and I was in the Pungo, paddled out. It was glass that day. I mean, as flat as Lake Erie is. And we get out there, the wind shifts 90 degrees, and now it felt like 4-footers back then, but it was probably like 1 to 2s in a paddle kayak, you know, and the thing is, you just have to keep reminding yourself, you just have to keep paddling or keep pedaling, you know, little by little. One of the worst things out there, when you're going along, it feels like you're not moving, you know, because you're miles offshore, there's nothing but water to compare it to. And the shoreline really isn't getting close enough for you to, you know, distinguish it. But you have to remember that you are gaining ground. Watch your map, set a waypoint, make sure you're getting past that waypoint. If you're not, what you want to do is you want to shift your direction towards an alternate return point so that you can use the wind or the waves that, you know, came up out of nowhere or that you can't push through. You can use those to get yourself back. Once you get off the water, you can figure out how to get back to your car.
So again, just like, so I understand this a little bit. So what is like bad courtesy for a boater, right? Like you cut somebody off, you get too close, the guy's drinking, you know what I mean? Or whatever, you throttle up on somebody. Like what's bad courtesy with kayakers? So if somebody's, trying to get into this and they haven't got a chance to get out with you, what are some things that you'd take your guys aside and be like, bro, that's no go. Like, that's not cool.
As far as my clients are concerned?
Yeah, just other kayakers, on the water, whether it's how you're interacting with other kayakers or maybe in relation to boaters, like I've seen kayakers when we're coming out of slips, where there's multiple channel or whatever you want to call it. And you'll see a kayaker and you're like, yeah, you have the right of way, but dude, you just rolled right in front of me. So like, what if I'm drinking and I'm not a smart, educated boater? Like that was dumb because you have the right of way. And again, this ain't I'm not attacking kayaker guys. Like there's a whole bunch of jackass boaters, the same thing, but like that to me would be one of those things. Like just because you have the right of way doesn't mean you should do it because you're going to put both parties in way. But like, what is a kayaker focused thing?
Well, it starts at the boat ramp. A lot of times it takes us a little bit of time to get set up. So don't go to the boat ramp and start setting up on the ramp. There's boats that want to launch. There's boats that want to come in.
Producer, we've seen that.
Go over to the side, set your kayak up, and get good at it. Get good at it so when you're ready to launch, you roll it in, you push it off, you tie it to the dock, and you get out of the way. You throw your cart back in, or what I do is I trailer launch. So I'm in and out of the way, tied to the dock in, a minute or two. And, really it comes down to we're fishing. There's no reason to get upset or to piss anybody off. We're out here to have a good time, not in any rush. The fish are going to wait for me. If there's a line of boats at the ramp, they already think I'm going to hold them up. So I'll just let them go. I'll sit here, watch the boats, just kind of hang out, stay out of the way, and just be respectful of everybody. And then when you get on the water, a lot of times we're traveling north to get out to a little bit deeper water. And depending on, the boat, they're going east or west. So I teach them to go to the back of them, the stern of them. Don't cut them off. Don't mess up their trolling path. Just give them some space. And remember, they could have, 200-300 feet of line out. They're going to have some boards out to the side. So just give the guys some space. We move slow. You wouldn't want them to cut you off, right? You try to.
I didn't even think of that, but like a kayaker trolling, you know what I mean? Your footprint, really, it's not that much different than ours. I mean, it's a little smaller, obviously, but yeah, while you're actually fishing, I guess I didn't really even think of that.
Well, it comes down to, at most, on a one-person kayak, we have 3 lines out. On a boat, you could have 6, 12. If you have to make a quick 90-degree adjustment, you're going to tangle all your lines. Now you have, 30 minutes to get back set up? With us, I can make a 90-degree turn, not tangle my lines, and get back on my path. And that doesn't come from avoiding boats. It actually comes from, making detours to pick up trash along the way, because we're so low you can see it. And I'm not going to drive past it, so I'll risk, twisting my lines just to get the trash. Well, if I could do that for trash, I can do that for boaters as well. It's really just comes down to respecting one another. We're out here having a good time, living in a paradise. Let's act like it.
I like it. So, I mean, we've mentioned things that, the dry suits may be a little bit different because, that's somewhat unique or whatever. But, having a VHF, there are a lot of the safety equipment's going to be the same, right? Some flares. Like what are you required? Because I know there's a lot of people don't know the laws on these things. Like once you put a motor, let's forget kayaks for a second. Once you put a motor, whether it's electric or gas, on like a square stern canoe, now all of a sudden you're treated as differently, even though we look at it as it's a canoe, right? So is it the same with the kayaks? Like what are you required if Ohio Watercraft rolls up on you? What do we need to have?
Well, if you're human powered, basically you just need a life jacket and a whistle. And if you're out at night, some kind of light device, some kind of signaling device, preferably a 360 light. When you put a motor on, now you have to have OH numbers on the side. You have to have navigation lights, red and greens, and your 360 on the back. And
so, and by motor,
that's
like
the only difference.
So if you had like my buddy's got a min coated trolling motor on his, like that deploys off the front or whatever on his kayak. So that is considered a motor. I mean, gas or it doesn't matter. It's a motor. So then we need OH numbers. You're basically a boat at that point. You need to have your regular nav lights, your anchor light, or whatever you want to call it on that boat, 360. So you're a boat.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I think it just comes down to it's so new, they don't really know what to require. Like a safety flag should absolutely be a requirement. A VHF radio, your phone, there's certain parts on the lake. As soon as you get away from the lake shore, you're not sending a text, you're not making a phone call. So what are you going to do? Just float and wait for somebody to come and help you out? But that's part of what I do is we might go to the extreme, and I might have redundancies after redundancies. But for that one time, that one situation where this goes wrong, that goes wrong, that goes wrong, well, we still got this. For example, in the foggy conditions, kayaks move very slow, and generally you don't have a heading sensor on your kayak. So fish finder might or might not know which direction you're going, depending on what kind of software. Now you're in a foggy situation. You think you're going north. Well, all of a sudden your fish finder's like, no, we're actually going south. You don't know which direction you're going. So having just a manual,
just a compass, right?
Yeah.
I carry a manual compass on my boat, and people all the time are like, "Oh, you got a compass for? You got $7,000 with electronics, you got all these TV screens." I'm like, yeah, what happens when they ain't working? Or a few times the satellites have been shut off back more in the 9/11 days with the power plant and stuff. Like they would shut those off every now and then. But yeah, that's crazy. So I think if somebody's like thinking about hiring you, obviously we suggest it, but I mean, I think that the smart play, if I'm talking to somebody, would be, don't be like, where are we going, trying to figure out like where the bite is. Like there's so many other ways to do that, and it's going to change nonstop. Like people think as guides like that's what they're hiring us for. And I personally don't think anything could be farther from the truth, because that's going to change so much that even if you think you're going to follow me today, like, dude, I'm going to fish actually tomorrow 20 miles away from where I fished today because the conditions are changing. But I mean, you're teaching them, not to be like redundant at some point here, but the safety stuff and how to actually navigate the vessel. Like you're almost like a boat driving teacher, really.
Yeah. In order to, well, it comes down to, with great power comes great responsibility, right? People have been watching me for years go out there on Lake Erie and do it and show that it's possible. And there's a lot of people that are now out there doing it, which is awesome. But if you're going to go out there, do it, you got to go out there and do it safely and make sure that you make it back to your family. And it's kind of a personal responsibility, since I kind of, made it somewhat popular.
I mean, have you taken flack for this besides somebody like me throwing some?
Have I what?
Have you taken any flack for this?
I take flack all the time.
Like joshing like I am with you, or like seriously, like people like, what are you doing?
All different ranges.
Don't be shy, Chuck. Don't be shy.
It's just, the usual haters online that sit on their couch and don't have anything better to do.
Keyboard commandos.
The cool thing about them is they're the ones that, give us power, right? Because they say, oh, well, what if this happens? Well, then you go out and you make a video and you're like, well, this is what happens when this happens, and it's just, it's not any people in the community or anybody like that. It's just, you always have those haters online. They come across a video or something like that, and maybe they don't know that you have that experience, or they just, you're doing what they want to do. They want to kind of pull you down. People are crabs in a bucket, right? But you just smile.
Producer Deuce, he got some good one-liners or what? I mean, I know they're old school stuff, but I like it.
I got
crabs in a bucket.
So,
dude, I have not heard crabs in a bucket, but I am all about crabs in a bucket right now.
The number one quote that has probably gotten me to this point is the best way to create the future is, or the best way to predict the future is to create it.
There you go. I mean, you're definitely, the pioneer kind of this, at least from around our area, to my knowledge. But being that the kayak world, it's a really big, small community, right? Like the different kayak things, some of the stuff that Fish USA does. And especially because all the social media and all that BS that we got going on, good and bad. Are there other places like Lake Huron or Lake Michigan where they have some of the other people doing kind of what you're doing on some of these other bigger bodies of water?
Not really in the Great Lakes. There is one guy up on Lake Michigan that, seen what I was doing and decided to kind of start it there. I haven't talked to him. I don't know how that's going. But, their fishery is not as predictable as ours.
I was just going to say, we've got more fish. I don't know, fun fact. We have more catchable sport fish in Lake Erie. Producer, do you remember this from one of our other podcasts? Than all of the rest of the Great Lakes put together by a lot. A lot. Right. So, yeah, if you're going to catch them and you're going to have to be kind of limited on your resources a little bit for travel and all that and distance covered, you're in the right spot.
Right. Now, in saltwater, this has been pretty common for at least a little while. There's, Robert Fields is out of Los Buzos, Panama, and those guys go after marlin and some pretty gnarly fish.
Yeah, but don't they? I've seen this now too. I'm a fishing connoisseur, but they kind of cheat a little bit. Don't they go out in big giant boats and drop them off of those? So that's kind of cheating a little bit.
Well, it's a safety thing because they might have to get to the fish 20 miles offshore. Well, if you're 20 miles offshore in a kayak, that's going to take you 12 hours to get to shore.
Sounds like a hot mess.
Because you want to figure, kayaks can move 4 or 5 miles an hour, depending on the power of the operator. But can you do that consistently for an hour or 2 hours? Consistently, you're going to go about 2 to 2.5 miles an hour. I tell everybody to look at 2 miles an hour as a constant pace. So if you're 2 miles offshore, you go in 2 miles an hour, it's going to take,
Wednesday,
an hour to get back. So these guys, they're 20 miles offshore. That's, 10 hours. And a lot can happen, especially on the ocean in 10 hours. So that's why they have the pungas to take them out there. And also, for example, the one guy, I think his name is Adam Fisk. He caught a 500-pound marlin that drug him like 30 miles offshore. And the punga had to chase him down, just to bring him back afterwards. So it's some people call it cheating. I call it just making sure people stay alive. And then there's guys out in Florida. Rob Will, how do you pronounce his last name? Well, if you look up Rob Will at Antidote Sport Fishing Charters or Antidote Charters, he does kayak fishing charters for like sailfin and stuff like that out there. I have a buddy that actually kind of gave me the idea to get into the guiding thing and kind of see it as possible, because I took a trip to Florida and, we paid him to go out for some speckled trout and stuff. And it was a really cool experience. He was living the life, and I told him, I said, you have a really cool job. He said, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And
I'll go with that.
At that time, I loved that, but now I fully understand it. I mean, There is nothing else. You know, look at you, Ross. What do you think about other than fishing? I mean, there's one or two maybe small things, but
I know
usually
people always say, I get asked all the time, what do you do when you're not fishing? When you run the type of business I am with the different elements, I mean, I fished all day today and here I am sitting here talking to you. I love doing the podcast, but no offense. Like, honestly, when we schedule these things, because we have to do them, you come home, man, and you're beat. And I've got a list. My phone's blowing up as we're sitting here right now. And it is 100% a lifestyle. Like, it's not an inspirational quote. It's not something for a t-shirt or something painted on the wall. This is what you do. And if you cut these different elements out, it doesn't work. Like, you can't make, you know what I mean? You can't make it just doing one thing. And you've obviously done a pretty good job at this. And I think you'll learn a lot more as things proceed, you know, because to get the guide clients, you do the other things because you can't afford, or it just doesn't make good sense to waste the resources or money to get them to you. Like, how do they show up? And so you're doing podcasts like this, or you're doing other things, or you're doing your own podcast. We're working sport shows. Me and you have shown up at a bunch of the same places. You know, you work with companies like Fish USA, and yeah, it's 100% a lifestyle. Like, then that's why I'm a little grumpy, aren't I, producer dude? Is that fair?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. He said sometimes.
I did say sometimes. Sometimes you're a joy to work with.
Oh, wow. You know what? There's many things we're learning today, but you know, there's just some of the, I see the kids and I say kids, even young adults, and I think there's a lot of people, and hell, it's been expressed to me by other people in the industry that there's a lot of people that feel like it's a cool thing. Like, maybe Timmy's not 6'9", so he's not going to play basketball. And fishing is a thing that doesn't really require, you know, to participate. It doesn't require certain physical things or even maybe mental things. You don't have to be crazy smart or whatever. And so there's a lot of people that get into it for those reasons. But I think there's a lot of people that get into it for the wrong reasons from a business standpoint, not pleasure fishing. You know, they're wearing tournament shirts around because they want to be, you know, part of something. And that's where I get grumpy, because it's like, no, this is my lifestyle. I've earned, you know, it's like, it's my blood, sweat, and tears, like those companies and those relationships and the work that I do for them. So I guess I do get a little grumpy, and I'd imagine you're getting there yourself too, because you just see the different ends of the business stuff, which brings me to something that I have to find out. Producer dude, he doesn't know this, but so we've had, I mean, I'm not going to say you're in tall cotton here, but we've had Al Linder, Larry Dahlberg, Gary Roach. Like, we've had some ballers. I'm not even sure how we did all of it. Producer dude, we're not allowed to tell him, right? But producer dude comes to me, and I don't literally listen to most of the things he says. He usually asks, it's like, he's my water wife. We don't listen to half of them. And he said, do you know Chuck Earls? You need to have him on the podcast. True story. And little did he know we were already talking about it, but here we are. Then he hits me with, did you know that the Fish USA situation? And I'm like, producer dude, what are you talking about? So why don't you fill us in here, producer dude?
So yeah, so I don't know if Chuck remembers me or has put it together. But I actually came across Chuck Ross when we started working together again on the YouTube stuff. I came across Chuck, and I reached out to him and wanted to see if he wanted to do somewhat the same thing that we were doing with Ross. So I was kind of two-timing you, Ross. I was looking for somebody else, but I may or may not be responsible for connecting Fish USA and Chuck. And I don't know if you put that together, Chuck, that I was the one.
Nice. Well, thank you for that. You know, there's a funny story. I remember the day that they sent me that email, and a lot of people don't believe that you can manifest things, but I'm on the water, and I think it was like a Thursday. I'm on the water, and all of a sudden I thought I should reach out to Fish USA and see if we can work together, you know, because I've always appreciated their service and the company. And Friday came along, I didn't think about it. And then here comes an email from Fish USA asking for the same thing.
There you go. Yeah, because if you remember, we talked, I think, on Facebook a little bit, you know, and I grew up in Avon Lake where you launched from. So, and I'd come across your videos. I think I first came across your dry suit test video, and I actually asked Ross if he would try that, and he said no.
Oh, come on, Ross.
True story.
It is a true story. Most of the things he suggests, I say, hell no. I can't, I
That
mean,
is
in
true
most of them,
story.
in fairness, most of them are ridiculous, but he is a good producer. I mean, we bicker like, cats and dogs, but the end result usually works out. So yeah, I mean, dude, I always, since you're big on one-liners, I always say it's not what you know, it's who you know, but what you do keeps you there.
Right.
And that's like, I get people all the time saying, hey, can you give me a rep with, Fish USA or Sim, whoever that company is? And I'm like, dude, don't step up to the plate till you're ready, because you're going to get one shot at this with these people. And then what people don't realize, I think, and this is kind of getting off topic, but the guy that's at company A at some point moves up or maybe moves out because people and personalities. And then he goes to company C, and all of a sudden you got an opportunity with company C, and that's the guy you pissed off at company A. Or maybe that you had a great relationship with. And, just like producer dude, he works with some of our people there. We produce things, for Fish USA. And so it's just, it's a business. People don't look at it as a business because they don't really think, what me and you are doing, that's a hobby to them. It's always going to be a hobby. Right. But for us, it is that lifestyle, but it still is a business because ultimately that's how we feed ourselves. So.
Yeah, we couldn't do what we do, if we couldn't pay our bills, right? We wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, along that side of it, I mean, because I've known guys like, for example, I won't say names, but guys that made the jump to the Bassmaster Elite Series, and or some of the other ones like Major League Fishing, and all these guys, what people don't realize is, like, a guy that quote unquote sucks on the Bassmaster Elite Trail, back home on his tri-state area, won every damn tournament every freaking weekend. You know what I mean? And people are like, oh, dude, that guy sucks. Like, well, in the tri-state area back home, he's going to clean your clock every single day, won 30 tournaments in a row or whatever. You know what I mean? And so everything's kind of relative. And where I'm going with this is several of these guys that I have really good relationships with, they've said to me, hey, my fishing is kind of where I think it needs to be. Like I'm working there, but I'm struggled with the business end, or the business end is amazing, but I can't quite get my fishing switched over from away from northern stuff into southern or tidal fishing or whatever that may be. And so with you, the kayak thing's huge. So you got good timing, right? And you got your little niche deal. Has the business end of things been difficult or more of a struggle trying to learn that? Because who the hell are you going to ask?
Well, I grew up around business. My dad had a home repair business growing up. So I was, 5-6 years old, putting light covers on just to help. So I always had that business mindset, and I've had a lot of jobs over the years, a lot of different jobs in a lot of different segments, different fields, everything from rebuilding giant injection machines, injection molding machines, to running independent retail stores and businesses for other people. And it just all kind of evolved into the toolbox that I use now. Is it hard? It's the most difficult thing you will ever do. But how bad do you want it, right? There is no give up. Every day you're going to have a reason to give up, but you just have to, remind yourself why you're doing it, or, just use certain next positive actions that are going to continue to move on and do things like the expos, and the podcast and the other little stuff that is going to continue to push the cart forward, even though right now it seems like it's the most impossible thing in the world. Luther Cipher said on my podcast, he said, giving up is never an option. You might get a TKO. You might get knocked out. Hopefully you just get knocked down. You can pick yourself up, but giving up's never an option. So because of that, and because of, I feel, the tools that I've had along the way, the mentors that I've had along the way, it all just kind of works itself out one way or another. Maybe not as fast as I want it to. It never happens that fast, but eventually it just always works. It always happens.
So where do you think the next focus is going to be for you? Is because again, the guiding thing's great and it opens doors and it allows you to stay out there and keep your craft rolling and getting better, and every day you're getting farther away from somebody to be able to be your competition. But at the same aspect, you got to be thinking about other things in the fishing business.
Well, it's hard to just make money on guiding, especially on Lake Erie. Not everybody's crazy. Not everybody's going to come out, even if they do have a dry suit in the winter months. That's going to take a special type of person. So you have to have other ways. I call them other piles of pennies. You just build another pile of pennies, because the pennies eventually grow into piles of nickels and nickels of dollars. But little stuff like that. So for example, I do kayak rigging, so in the wintertime, people can't get on the water. I can rig out their kayak and get it ready. So they're just ready to hit the water in the springtime. They don't have to try to figure it out and maybe make mistakes and have those frustrations. They can come to me. I can advise them on how to set it up depending on their fishing style, what to use, and I can set it up and get it ready for them. Also speaking gigs and just doing seminars for people. I do some private coaching and stuff like that on the side. What else? Well, I'm working on the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, the kayak division, and the kayak division in the fall brawl. That's not a profitable thing. That's just something, to boost, to push the kayak fishing sport forward and bring some new stuff to the community. But
yeah. Producer, do you feel like you're ready to go kayak fishing now?
I do, because I'll feel safe. I will feel totally safe.
Well, I'm going to throw him under the bus since he throws me under.
I don't really want to fish either. I just would like to go out on the kayak.
See, I was just going to say, he's not really going to fish, number one. Number two, second slap for anybody that's like, oh, producer dude's the best. He's a jet skier.
A conscientious jet skier.
And he is. You are now.
I am. Well, I didn't have him then, back before I fished with you.
So, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's another fun fact.
Relatively new.
Every day. Yeah. Interesting. So in closing here, Chuck, because we could talk about fishing for till, oh my gosh, or bitching about things, because God, we're good at both of those things.
Grandpa.
Right? But one of us is anyhow. Leave us with something that you think, like your one tip or whatever. We always ask guys this, and we did one of these other day, and it was like, guys either freeze up when I ask them this, or they have like some great philosophical answer. So we'll see which one it is for you. I think I already know which one it's going to be. But, for somebody that's listening to this, that's either thinking about getting into kayak fishing, or maybe they have and they feel a little lost, or like they're, their head's spinning with this. What is something that you would tell that your clients or somebody that you're consulting with to kind of keep them in the game?
Well, when I first got the first kayak, the guy that I bought it from, Wade Nichols, he told me, Chuck, leave the fishing gear at home, get the kayak out. When the water warms up, obviously, flip it over, climb back in it, learn self-rescue, and learn the limitations of the kayak. It's going to do a couple of things. It's going to prepare you when you do get in that situation, because you are new. And it's also going to build your confidence, and a lot of it is a mindset thing. So once you build that confidence, that it's not a fact of, well, can I get back in? Well, you can. And that's the most important thing, because it can be dangerous. You can always find yourself in a dangerous situation, but if you prepare properly for it, you take that danger and you bring it way down to where you can manage it, and you can work through the situation and get back to your family. That's first and foremost.
I like it. I think that's a good tip. That's a good tip for any type of fishing is, learn how to back up a boat or your trailer or whatever before you go out on a Saturday when everything's crazy. So simple,
and
but
I would say the second thing, it should really be lumped along with the first thing, is always dress for the temperature of the water.
You hear that, producer dude?
You're going to go in, it's when.
I'm not going in the water, Ross.
Well, we're going to put Ross in a dry suit, and he's coming swimming with me this winter.
He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it.
We're going to have a challenge. Raise some money for charity or something.
Oh, I like challenges. Producer dude he is you don't know this. He's salivating right now for a video. He's just like, this is the video.
Anytime I can make Ross look dumb, I'm all for it.
You hear this? This is my partner. Unbelievable. You'd be glad you didn't get hooked up with him. What a horrible human being. That was an evil Smithers laugh too. Well, that's a good one. That's a good one to close in. I like that. Like I said, we could talk about this stuff forever, and I can't thank you enough for your time. And we'll have to do one of these again and check in and see where you're at, because I feel like you're moving and shaking and gonna keep going in the right direction. So, thanks again for giving us your time, and we'll have some of your contact stuff in there if somebody wants to get a hold of you to do some kayak fishing on Lake Erie. So, producer dude, could you help me, since you're probably have a cheat sheet in front of you? BIgwaterfishing.com.
Yes.
YouTube.
Yes.
Instagram.
Yes.
Facebook.
Yes.
BIgwater Fishing.
Yes.
Podcast.
BIgwaterfishing.com.
Right. Podcast, because you have us everywhere. If there's a digital download, we're on it, right?
Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podbean. I think I saw us on. I don't know. There's probably others, but those are the main ones that I know.
So, and if you get in a pinch, you can watch me and Chuck here live and direct on YouTube. But then if you're working out, sweating to the oldies like a producer dude does on a exercise bike, you could go on to BIgwaterfishing.com and click right there to see all that stuff or the links. So thanks for tuning in. Until the next episode, we are out. We're going to the lake. I got some more work to do before the sun goes down.